Now, you know we're in trouble, especially when satirical websites tell more truth than, of course, the mainstream media out there that actively is running with hoaxes and fake news out there that I even fell for and will be breaking down in this video. That, plus a lot more important updates about what is happening right now. And before getting into it, there really couldn't be more of an honest statement than from this satirical Babylon Bee website with their headline, quote, "Gang of masked bandits steal another $500 billion from your grandchildren." And as a daily reminder here, if you're putting your faith in politicians and central controllers, you are going to have a very bad time. And it's always best to be skeptical of governments, especially the ones asking for centralization and more power and authority over you, which always should be resisted in an intelligent fashion. And I have to say that is definitely happening in Israel right now, as thousands have decided to protest against their prime minister, while, of course, maintaining social distancing in an awe-inspiring, incredible scene that unfolded recently in Israel that is worth noting. Now, before we get into all the fake news hoaxes, I wanted to tell you guys about one of the businesses that we personally work with, and that is GetYourSilverNow.com. This is a company that I've been working with for a number of years now, buy a bunch of their products, personally trust. We, of course, have an affiliate deal set up with each other. And if you're looking for some silver or gold, check out GetYourSilverNow.com. The link, of course, will be in the description. Okay, so one of the biggest stories developing right now and is creating a big firestorm is, of course, Lysol Gate, as of course Lysol is now trending #1 on Twitter. Why is this? Well, that's because Donald Trump, during his press conference yesterday, talked about the potential use of disinfectant when it comes to killing this virus. And now the mainstream media is running with this story and has essentially weaponized it, saying that he is suggesting and somehow telling people to do this, which, of course, if you actually listen to the press conference, he did not. And shortly afterwards, he even cleared up his statements and retracted them by saying it would only be used on the surface when, of course, talking about disinfectant. It's also important to be aware that this talk in the scientific community is going on right now, even with the idea of hydrogen peroxide being a potential treatment for the sickness. There's studies looking at ultraviolet blood therapy that some people are looking at. This is a bus in Asia being disinfected from this sickness using UV light, which the president was talking about. UV light is also being used at the banks and hospitals to disinfect different surfaces, which of course people need to be made aware of in context to what Donald Trump was talking about. Now, of course, he wasn't that coherent about his statements and he had to make a clarification, but for the media to make this as big of a firestorm as it is right now is really disingenuous. Even major disinfectant manufacturers have come out and warned people not to inject themselves with disinfectant, which of course the mainstream media is also running with. Now, even myself, personally, after seeing this story by The Independent and reading the article about it, I thought that this was just some kind of political gaffe, which happens with politicians sometimes. A misstatement, which I thought it would be interesting to compare to when Donald Trump talked about this being like the flu all the way back in late February, to now the extreme of potentially suggesting to inject disinfecting. But again, we have to understand here, talked about the idea, and to say that he is suggesting it is again disingenuous, which of course made me issue a correction and clarification, which is important for everyone to see. But again, just seeing this story yesterday, I didn't think it was going to be that big of a big deal. I thought it was just a politician making a gaffe. But to see the way that the mainstream media is running with this as their kind of attack against Donald Trump, distracting us with this utter nonsense, essentially a big nothing burger is just absolutely ridiculous, and it deserves to be called out. Now, again, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. There are some actions that do deserve to be called out, but the truth matters here. And essentially, this is a big distraction that takes us away from actually dealing with the real situation that the world is facing. I mean, look at Twitter right now. Lysol, hashtag disinfectant, hashtag don't drink bleach, hashtag Trump's not a doctor. With all the problems we're dealing with, this is our focus? Come on, you gotta be kidding me. Now, what we should be focusing on is, of course, the government's transfer of wealth, aka bailouts, and government overreach. As we're getting the news right now that the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, decided to raid a spa clinic in Michigan that was giving out free IVs to essential workers. Those free naturopathic services that, by the way, doctors in New York are conducting on many patients regarding certain vitamins. And because of those actions, the FBI, with the Department of Health and Human Services, decided to attack this facility. And again, everything that this, quote, spa was doing was voluntary, and it was shut down by the federal authorities. And again, the treatments that they were doing there are the same treatments used by mainline medical institutions for intensive care patients dealing with this sickness that have shown promising results. This is not disinfectant here. This is not Lysol. This is a commonly used medical practice that the FBI is just retroactively shutting down, which is ridiculous and needs to be called out. By the way, this is the same treatment that if you talk about on YouTube, your video and your channel will be deleted for even mentioning this mainline treatment that is showing promising results dealing with this sickness. In related news to dealing with this sickness, we're also getting the latest information from Italy, where people who are recovering from this are surpassing the new cases that are developing, which of course is very good news. In New York State, there was a recent test done talking about people having immunity with antibodies to this sickness, and as we reported on it yesterday, it's important to also make you aware that now the New York City Health Department is telling people that these antibody tests are, quote, ineffective because they result in false positives. Medical professionals are told not to use these tests because of uncertainty of how they work, which of course casts doubts on the study that we talked about yesterday. It's important to note the Stanford study that is highly cited about many people contacting this sickness also has been retracted, which is important for everyone to understand, since again, this is a very fast-moving situation, and things that we were told about this sickness are turning out to be not true, like the fact that it was fever being the main symptom of this. And now we're finding out that 2/3 of serious cases of this sickness don't have fever. And now questioning people's fever has even been put up to question whether it will be an effective measure to test for this sickness or not. Meanwhile, of course, a lot of people in the establishment and media are putting their full faith in, of course, vaccines. Again, should be questioned, since, of course, even the flu vaccine is not that effective. So to believe that a vaccine against this sickness will somehow be, should, of course, be questioned with everything else coming from the establishment right now. And while we're distracted by fake news, as we can't even get the basics of exactly what we're dealing with here, government is helping themselves and their friends to, of course, billions of dollars, helping out, of course, their buddies, the special interests, while, of course, giving you chicken scraps, essentially running a Ponzi scheme and a transfer of your wealth, which will only feature in debt this country, while of course not dealing with the problems in front of us. And with another bailout just passing and more promised, especially now to the oil industry, whose top executives and CEOs profited royally after making very irresponsible actions over producing oil, which the United States is the #1 producer of in the world. And now we're talking about a bailout for these reckless individuals that were a big part in creating the problem that we're dealing with right now in the energy sector, which again will translate through other problems in our daily lives. In yesterday's video on the backup channel, we talked about our food supply chain, and just like historically, whenever we have top-down government control and central planning, we of course have a lot of mismanagement and waste with very bad decisions that will have even worse ramifications for the average citizen. As we are seeing our food supply chain break down, tons of waste and billions of dollars of food being thrown out, as of course food banks are seeing record demand for people trying to get food. Again, I went into great detail about that yesterday on our backup channel, Change the News, with this video entitled, Will There Be Breadlines in America?, which I strongly recommend you check out. Lots of very important developments when it comes to the food supply chain that we should be all made aware of. Again, not a time to panic, but a time to be smart, intelligent, and prepared. I want to thank all those people who notified me of the correction that I had to make. I appreciate you guys more than ever. It's important to be honest. It's important to speak truth, and we could only do that with proper communication and, of course, free speech. This is what we stand for, and if you do too, share this video with your friends and family members, because the only way to progress is to hear different ideas, is to have open communication, is to be able to admit when we are right and when we are wrong. It's important not to let your ego get the best of you and to prioritize the truth over everything else. Thank you again so much for watching. Love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.